What's going on, everybody? If you're seeing this page, that means the official Torian Rain Reloaded merch store is now available. To get access to the store, make sure you go ahead and click the store tab on my YouTube channel. From there, you will be able to see all the merch that is available. We have mugs, shirts, hoodies, joggers, and so much more to come. All original designs made by yours truly, Torian Rain Reloaded. Now go ahead and get your merch today, and you can feel nothing in style. So we are back with another usual suspect, and this is someone I've never talked about on my channel before, but I've talked about the publication in which this person was a part of. And this man's name is Jann Wenner, and he is the founder of Rolling Stone. Now we've had our history or dealings when it comes to Rolling Stone for the last few years. Remember, they came out with that list, that top 200 best singers of all time. It was a top 100 or whatever it was, and that list just seemed kind of off for some reason, especially when it came to black artists. Well, now Jann is under fire and most likely out of a job because of some comments that he made as it pertained to black artists. So I'm gonna go ahead and read this article that's coming from TMZ that was posted September 16, 2023. Rolling Stone's founder just lost decision-making power in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, all because he called black and female artists inarticulate, TMZ has learned. A rep for the hall tells us Jann Wenner has been booted from the Fame Hall of Fame's board of directors for their foundation. This after a vote was taken among the current members. Sources with direct knowledge tells us the only dissenting vote was from Jon Landau. Jann Wenner, who helped launch Rolling Stone magazine way back in 1967, did an interview with the New York Times this week in which he talks about who he interviewed for his forthcoming offering, The Masters, which contains wide-ranging sit-downs with 7 rock and roll gods. That includes Mick Jagger, Bob Dylan, John Lennon, Bruce Springsteen, Bono, Jerry Garcia, and Pete Townsend, all of whom, as the NYT Journal noted, are white and male. The Q. There are 7 subjects in the new book, 7 white guys. In the introduction, you acknowledge the performers of color and women performers are not just in your zeitgeist, which to my mind is not plausible for Jann Wenner. Janis Joplin, Johnny Mitchell, Stevie Nicks, Stevie Wonder, the list keeps going. What do you think is the deeper explanation for why you interviewed the subjects you interviewed and not other subjects? Wenner's answer is telling. He says, when I was referring to the zeitgeist, I was referring to black performers, not to the female performers, okay? Just to get that accurate. The selection was not a deliberate selection. It was kind of an intuitive over the years. It just fell together that way. The people had to meet a couple criteria, but it was just kind of my personal interest and love of them. He adds, insofar as the women, just none of them were as articulate enough on this intellectual level. The reporter pushes back incredulously, asking if he really doesn't think Joni Mitchell was articulate enough to talk music on an intellectual level. Wenner responded, "It's not that they're not creative geniuses. It's not that they're inarticulate, although go have a deep conversation with Grace Slick or Janis Joplin. Please be my guest. You know, Johnny was not a philosopher of rock and roll. She didn't, in my mind, meet that test. Not by her work, not by other interviews she did. The people I interviewed were the kind of philosophers of rock." He then said this about black artists. Of black artists, you know, Stevie Wonder, genius. I suppose when you use a word as broad as masters, the fault is using that word. Maybe Marvin Gaye or Curtis Mayfield. I mean, they just didn't articulate at that level. So that's the entire article right there. So as you can see, it seems he had an issue with female artists and black artists, no matter what gender they fell into. He said, in his own words, that only the white male artists were articulate. And when it came to the black male artists, like, why am I even having a discussion as it pertains to them when it comes to discussing things such as masters of their craft, or say having masters over their music? But the way I'm seeing it, or the way he's framing it, is as black artists just aren't at the top of their game like these white male artists are, which many can beg to differ. I mean, we have artists such as James Brown, who's the godfather of soul. We have Aretha Franklin, who's the queen of soul. Michael Jackson, who is, in my opinion, the king of music, but they regulated him to the king of pop. It is what it is. Janet Jackson, a lot of people have given her the queen of pop, but I've also heard people give her the title of empress of pop as well. So hers is kind of interchangeable. Then you have Mary J. Blige, who is the queen of hip hop and R&B. And so many other artists out there that I can't really name who have amazing titles, who have a long resume of music. Whitney Houston, The Voice. But he thinks in his head that they don't articulate at the level of masters or master in his eyes. And that's why he got kicked off the board. And mind you, like, again, this is the founder of Rolling Stone magazine. Like I said, this is the same magazine that a few months ago, I think it was a few months ago, had put out that list about the top 100 greatest singers of all time, or greatest artists of all time. And some of those numbers were shaky as far as the placement of a few of these artists. The fact that they had Michael Jackson, who has probably had one of the most illustrious entertainment careers ever, was like near 30. That was very questionable. And then there were some artists that should have been on there that weren't on there. But that's fine. We don't need a countdown to tell us who is great. We know who we idolize and like who are great artists. But I'm not surprised this is coming from him, because there's also been some other controversy that Rolling Stone has been in over the years as it pertains to race as well. And then when you hear what this guy has said, it's not surprising. He's the founder, so he has a lot of say over there. They just can't remove him as the founder because he's the founder, but they said, well, we'll take you off of this board. But he's basically telling you the white man's ice is indeed colder. As a matter of fact, like literally on the book that says The Masters, on the cover, it has the names of, these artists on here. And there's nothing to take away from their talent or anything of that nature. But when he says that black artists don't articulate well, what exactly is Jann Wenner trying to say? Like, what is he trying to say? Again, that's that code speak. He's saying something, but you have to decipher through what it is that he's actually saying. He's basically saying that they're not that good, or they're not better than these other artists that he thinks are good. That goes back to even beyond the Rolling Stone about how some of these award shows are ran, like the Grammys or the VMAs or the Billboard Awards, any type of music-based award show, especially them Grammys, who many have said has been biased for years when it came to black artists. So I'm not surprised that this dude came out the side of his neck and said what he said. And guess what? I'm not going to lose any sleep over it either. We know who we held up as great talent. I've always said that black people, specifically black Americans, are the trendsetters of the world. We drive the culture forward, and that most definitely includes musical talent in all forms of genres, whether it's hip hop, R&B, classical, jazz, rock and roll. Ironically, they have this thing called the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. For years, it took black people to get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Ironically, a genre of music that black people created. And so on and so forth. We did that. Our ancestors did that. So Jann Wenner can take his little opinion, because that's really all it is, and shove it up his ass. And I'm glad they kicked him off of this board. Unfortunately, that's not going to put a dent in his pocket, or a hole in it, rather, I should say. But it did enough for them to get him removed off of the R&R Hall of Fame, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame board, which means he really has no say anymore, which basically also tells me he's the one that's over or involved with the voting process, because it's a voting process about who gets on there. I think they do like 5 nominees a year. and it's like a pool. And you know how many times like we've seen, like, wondered or questioned why a lot of black artists never got onto these Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, like they never got inducted in, or why it took them so long to get in when they clearly showed their body of work. And it's like, why aren't they getting in there? I wouldn't be surprised if the NFL Hall of Fame is ran the same exact way. A lot of these institutions that are PC ran are very biased. But then again, we already knew that. So I would not be surprised if he had a say in that. Because I remember it was a thing where it was for years people was wondering why it took so long for Janet Jackson to get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Because clearly she's been doing her thing since the 80s as far as music goes. Very consistently over the years. Very recognizable, and was able to step out of her brother's shadow. And she just got inducted in what, 2019, I think it was? Was it 2019? Yeah. When people said she should have got in a long time ago. I wouldn't be surprised if the reasoning why that was, if it was because of Jann Wenner.